Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror films and Giallo films. And this is one I'm pretty excited to talk about because this is one that I did pick up recently in preparation for this marathon, but it's one whose title I've heard come up quite a few times, seen on a lot of lists of best and most essential. And you have the great acting duo of Edwidge Fenech and George Hilton. And that, of course, is 1972's Case of the Bloody Iris, which the original Italian title, seen here, which is way too long for me to attempt, is almost as long as Martino's Your Vice is a Locked Room, which translates to Why Those Strange Drops of Blood on Jennifer's Body. Very long title. Case of the Bloody Iris is a lot better, which in the UK it was released as Blue Erotic or Erotic Blue. Now, it was directed by Giuliano Carnimeo, who is credited as Anthony Ascott. It was not uncommon for Italian directors to adopt American names. But it also stars Paola Quattrini, Giampiero Albertini, George Rigau, Franco Agostini, and Ben Cara. And Ben Cara plays a pretty effectively sinister role in this. So 1972 was a pretty good year for Giallos because that was also the year that Edwidge Fenech also appeared in Your Vice is a Locked Room, Only I Had the Key, All Colors of the Dark, and George Hilton was also in All Colors of the Dark, but also in My Dear Killer. Great year for Giallos. Now, this whole film takes place in this one apartment high-rise, and what's actually pretty interesting about this one is that it's one where a police commissioner and his assistant are trying to solve this case, but it's not really a procedural. It's still a Giallo. It's still following Fenech as a main character, which she, again, like All Colors of the Dark, gives a very great, compelling, sympathetic performance. I will say I still like All Colors of the Dark more, but there is still some really cool stuff about this one, including some of the shots. Some of the shots I thought were very well done. It opens up with this one blonde woman who gets out of a payphone, gets buzzed into this high-rise, goes into the elevator that's full of people, and as the elevator goes up, each time people come out, we see someone in there with a black trench coat reach into their pocket, pull out the gloves, and then more people get out. And then when it's finally just him and the blonde woman, she's then stabbed to death. And the blood looks fake. It looks like really vibrant, thick red paint, as typical for 70s, all 70s films, but especially over in Europe. But I love that look. I love that really seedy grindhouse cheap look. Even when he slashes her in the throat, it just looks like a smear. But I love that look. And some of the witnesses was this elderly professor who plays violin, this elderly widow, and this other woman who works at a seedy gentleman's club, I'll say. They call it a casino, but she does these shows. And after the murder, that she's on her way, and we see her, what she does at this casino is she kind of wrestles men for 3 minutes on stage, and attending this show is George Hilton, who plays Andre. Now, Andre is the architect of the high-rise, and he turns to this photographer, who is a cartoon, by the way. I'll say his character was one thing that kind of got annoying. a lot of people say that the two bubbling cops from Last House on the Left were annoying, and they were. The commissioner and his assistant in this are sort of comic reliefs, but I think it's done well. I do think they are funny. This guy's a cartoon. He's a photographer who shoots models, and Andre is trying to get him to recruit some models for some advertisement. Here he meets Jennifer, played by Fanick, and her friend Marilyn, who is played by Paula Quattrini. And he even gets them a lease to live in the apartment. And that's pretty much the basis of the film. And then these women within the apartment building are being killed off. But Fanick is also being hunted by her ex-husband, I'm going to say, who's played by Ben Cara. His name is Adam, who is this... They do a good job at making him look creepy. He's this cult leader, this sort of sex cult called Iris. And she escaped from him and became a model. And he's after her because he wants her back. And that's pretty much the sort of the structure of the film. That's the main plot. Now, most of the deaths are stabbings, and there is some blood. There is one that I hadn't seen before in a Giallo. Of course, Don't Torture a Duckling had drownings, but we only see the aftermath. This was a pretty suspenseful scene. The second victim we see is the woman on the elevator who works at the casino, where she is tied up in such a way, kind of hog-tied, but more intricately, and placed in the bathtub. And the way her hands are tied and the way the rope is around her neck, she can't lift her head. So we just see the water kind of rising and she's pleading for her life. And I have to say, drowning is one of the ways that scares me the most as far as dying. So knowing that's coming is a pretty suspenseful scene. The look of the killer, you got solid black fabric, fedora, trench coat, these sort of spicy mustard colored gloves, I guess, rubber gloves. And it's actually her apartment. The girl that drowns, that's the one that Fanick and her friend move into. And so that's the basic setup for the film. And this movie does a great job with its red herrings. I mean, it wants us to think it's George Hilton, wants us to think it's her ex-husband Adam. We also learn that Hilton has a phobia of blood. He has hemophobia. And that's basically the structure of the film. It's very well done. Fanick gives a great performance. And I don't know if this would be a top 10 Giallo, and I don't want to say it's run-of-the-mill, because there is some different things in it. There's a few attacks on Fanick. The killer really wants Fanick. And there's even at one point where the killer speaks. It, comes to her once in the night. She sees him and screams. He leaves. Another time the killer comes in, kind of holds on to her so she can't move and tells her, don't speak or don't move or something. So we hear the masked killer speak without, a disguised voice, like New York Ripper or something like that. The flashbacks of her and Adam in the sex cult has this great kaleidoscopic, dreamlike atmosphere to it that I thought was well shot. There's another sequence in which the killer attacks Fanick where she goes to take her shirt off and the killer grabs her arms. So there's the fabric of her shirt in between their faces. And I thought that was a good... I thought that was very neat looking. Kind of like a Tenebrae when the woman takes her shirt off. There's the slash and the blood. And then also with one of the last victims who's killed out in the street in broad daylight, it really makes everyone within the film think it's George Hilton. She's lying face down, and the camera is somehow underneath her face. So there's like this little opening by like where you can see, and the assistant and the commissioner are in the shot there. And I do think their sorry, allergies, dog. Um, I do think their comic relief works a lot better than Last House on the Left. Because it's not bumbling dopiness. I mean, the commissioner collects stamps. So he acts like he just found this great piece of evidence. Like, my God, can you believe finding something like this at a crime scene by accident? This is wonderful. Someone's like, did you find something? He's like, yeah, this is a limited edition from whatever country. And the assistant has a very dry sense of humor. And eventually Fanick befriends the daughter of the the violinist. And I guess with that, I'll get into spoilers, but I do highly recommend this. It's more your standard Giallo than, say, a Martino film, but it's still very good. The music, who was done by, of course it doesn't say on here, because why would it? I got to give credit to the music. Bruno Nicolai, who's done a lot. So yeah, there is some standout things. Like, actually, I'm going to give credit to Hilton, Fanick, her friend Marilyn, Quattrini. I'll say the humor between the commissioner and the assistant. I never did explain why the photographer is a cartoon, because there is one scene where Fanick is modeling and she kind of has a vision of her ex-husband coming in, and in the dream she knocks over one of the photography lights, and he has this moment where he's like, it's like this up close kind of wide angle. I think it's wide angle. He's like, oh, she must be crazy, crazy, crazy. He sounds like the magician from Frosty the Snowman. It's just, this guy is so over the top. So with that, I'm going to get into spoilers. But I do recommend this. I do think this is a very good Giallo. And I think if you're a Giallo fan, or even the 70s exploitation or Italian films, I do think that you'll enjoy it. So, at one point, spoilers, at one point, she thinks Adam is in her apartment. She runs to, I believe it's the violin professor's house. They go over with her. They find a bloody iris flower on the floor. Open a closet. Adam falls out with his switchblade still in his stomach. Then at one point, her friend Marilyn is killed out on the street, broad daylight, and Andre is with her, and he's covered in blood because she's up against him. Everyone thinks it's him, and then he's being fingered for it. They're all out. They're all out to get him. At one point, Fanick decides to do her own investigating, and she goes to the elderly widow woman's apartment. She notices that she has like some crime comics, and she sneaks in and she's attacked. And she's attacked by this deformed young man. He's got cuts and burns all over him. He's not right in the head. No one really knows he exists. The widow's kind of hiding him in a closet. But she attacks him. She thinks he's the killer. She calls the commissioner over. They can't find him. She's still trying to help Andre and kind of try to keep him clear, but she also doubts that, she doubts his innocence as well. At one point, her and the violin professor's daughter get in the elevator. It sends them down to the cellar, down in the boiler room. The daughter walks in front of the boiler. We see the killer turn the steam on, hits her. The effects look good. I actually really like the effects. She dies. She goes back up to her apartment, sees the killer, but she can hear the violin player playing. So she goes over to his apartment, sees the deformed son of the widow dead in the violinist's apartment, sees a tape player, and that's when we get the reveal that he's the killer. And he's the one that killed all the women because he believed all these women were corrupting his daughter. And he got the idea to dress this way from the deformed son, because he saw him dressing that way one night. I'm guessing because he's a fan of pulp noir comics, which we see. And so the professor, who is the killer, throws the widow's deformed son over the railing, and we get this nice shot of it just going down. He's about to throw Fanick over. That's when Andre comes to save her. They have a tussle. Eventually, he's leaning over the railing. The professor's about to stab him. But he did a maneuver, so the professor cuts his own hand, and the blood is dripping on Andre's face. And we get a flashback to when we find out how he got his hemophobia. It flashes back to him as a young boy in an auto accident in this truck where he's pinned on the floor and his dad is over him, bleeding on his face. And he's able to kick him over, and we see him fall, and I like the shot of it when he falls. His hand is, with the glove, is up against the camera. We see the blood kind of trickle out of his head. And that's how we get the reveal and the end to the killer. And then the film ends with this other woman going into the payphone that we opened up with. Now, I think this movie did a great job with its... the best Giallos keep you guessing. The best Giallos, when it steers you in the direction of a red herring, you believe it. You don't question it. You don't say, well, how is it that person? You believe it. Then when it changes, it fakes you out. You're like, nope, we're going this way. You're like, oh, what? Wow. And all the ones I've seen so far, maybe except for Seven Deaths of the Cat's Eye, of this marathon, have done really good jobs. Have done a wonderful job with their red herrings. And this is another one that did do a good job. Wants us to think it's Adam, or Andre, or the deformed son. I thought it might even be the widow at one point. I thought it might be the violinist's daughter at one point. And when it really wants you to think it's one of those specific characters, you do believe it. And then, it's just as shocking when they steer you in the other direction. So, it did a great job with that. And to me, that's the best part about a Giallo, is the mystery and how it pulls you along in all these different directions. I think this one did do a great job with that. Case of the Bloody Iris, I really liked. As far as other 1972 Giallos, I did like Vices a Locked Room more. Probably liked All Colors of the Dark more. I did like Fanick's performance in that better. But as a film, I'm not really sure. I haven't seen My Dear Killer yet. I do have it. That is on the list of what to get to. But yeah, I really did enjoy this film. I thought it was solid. The music as well, whether it be the opening credits or during the kill scenes. There is one part where it shows Fanick walking through, she's walking through the street into the apartment building. It's kind of pleasant sounding. Then when she gets, she goes through this, the sort of push door, the round door into the building, and the music just transitions into this dreadful, like it's pleasant, and then it's like this. I love the look of it. It's got this really great drive-in, grindhouse exploitation feel to it, especially with like the fake-looking blood. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. Very solid Giallo, solid performances, good story, good reveal. Really kept me guessing. I really did enjoy it. 1972's Case of the Bloody Iris, aka Why Those Strange Drops of Blood on Jennifer's Body, and if you're in the UK, Erotic Blue or Blue Erotic. But anyway, stay tuned for more Italian horror films and giallos. Thank you for watching.